Welcome to the webinar, Market Opportunities in Emerging Consumer Health and Wellness Ecosystems. My name is Sriram Ramanathan, VP and Group Director here at Lux Research, and I will be moderating today's session. Healthcare is undergoing a major transformation whereby the when of care as well as where care is delivered is changing. And this transformation only accelerated during the pandemic. Now, while this is disruptive to traditional players in this space, this also opens up new opportunities for not so traditional companies. That is, companies or clients and prospects who are not really working in the healthcare space, participating in the healthcare space. I'm joined by my colleagues today who are going to be discussing how to tap into these opportunities. Cheryl Auger, Senior Anthropologist and Director of Client Delivery and Success, Harini Venkatraman, PhD Senior Analyst, and Nardev Ramanathan, PhD Senior Analyst here at Lux Research. Together, they bring a very eclectic mix of experience spanning anthropology, digital, biotechnology, and agri-food. For all those who are attending the webinar, throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, you can type those questions in the questions box on your screen. Time permitting, we will answer all those questions. If your question does not get answered, rest assured, somebody from Lux Research will be in touch with you. Also, if you have questions after the webinar, feel free to email us at questions@luxresearchinc.com and we will respond. Now, without much further delay, let's jump into the presentation.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Sriram. For today's agenda, we will first discuss market opportunities from the point of view of consumers. Consumer-centric approaches may not sound particularly new, but my colleague Cheryl will highlight how it's important to have anthropological context to understanding consumer attitudes, and we'll share our methodology and framework around this. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Once we've established these key concepts and methodologies, Harini and I will walk you through 2 case studies covering digital health and nutrition respectively, focused on a rapidly growing chronic disease globally, type 2 diabetes. These aim to show you just how you can apply our framework to understanding how these companies find success. And finally, we will speak more broadly about future possibilities. We will highlight why some companies have failed to succeed in the past and which areas they failed to address. And we will also discuss how you can apply the framework that we discussed today to plan your innovation strategy and discuss an example of a futuristic technology as well, in thinking about how you want to apply this framework. So let's get started with understanding consumer attitudes in health and wellness. Now, the concept of sustainability is so often tied to things like net zero emissions, lowered carbon footprints, green technologies, and so on. All true, of course, but sustainability is so much more. Few may link health and wellness to sustainability, but guess what? Health and wellness is in fact part of the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is the 3rd goal, and clearly disease management is not just about treatment, but also prevention to allow for more sustainable and healthy lifestyles. At Lux, sustainability forms the very backbone of how we think about innovation. We look at this from 3 main pillars: climate tech, circular tech, as well as future consumer tech. And for today, we'll be focusing on the 3rd pillar, which is future consumer technology. The thing with health and wellness is that for many years now, it remains highly monopolized by your usual suspects in the nutrition, pharmaceutical, and medical device industries. Let's take Medtronic, a pure play medical device player. They acquired Nutrino in 2018. Nutrino is an AI-based analytics platform that provides personalized dietary recommendations. The intent is to leverage its advanced machine learning algorithms to better understand glycemic control as part of its diabetic solutions. Bayer, a top biopharma, partnered with Zitra, a dermatology company that leverages microbiome modulation know-how to treat skin diseases like eczema and atopic dermatitis. Again, we are seeing an interesting pattern where dominant players are moving out of their comfort zone, dabbling in new areas. And finally, Abbott, another major biopharma, also announced Lingo biowearables in last year's Consumer Electronics Show. They already have a continuous glucose monitor in the market, Freestyle Libre, but still they went a step further to include the detection of ketones and lactates, as well for insights into ketoses and other health issues. In summary, all these big players are really stepping outside of their comfort zone to try to maintain their dominance in core health areas. And these are not easy business decisions. They require a lot of investments and could lead to many years before a return is seen. Yet they continue to make such moves. Now, players outside this traditional sphere have also made attempts to penetrate the health and wellness market. Google, whose subsidiary Verily announced a partnership with Alcon, which is part of Novartis, to develop a glucose sensing lens. Dyson announced an air purifying headphone during the pandemic. And Apple conducted the largest ever atrial fibrillation screening study with Stanford University, with almost 500,000 volunteers signing up to validate its ECG-enabled smartwatch. But all these companies saw limited success. Verily and Alcon, they had to shut down their project. Dyson's device was heavily slammed even before launching, and Apple's heart study found that 2/3 of its subjects were receiving false alerts. Now, of course, there are some technical reasons for these failures, but there's also an overarching failure to understand consumer attitudes and perceptions, which led to these failures, which I'll come back to, with some additional insights later in the talk. But ultimately, there are plenty of market opportunities in health and wellness from outside the traditional sphere. You've seen, Google, Apple, Dyson trying, but understanding consumer core beliefs is key to this success. Wouldn't you say, Cheryl?
Absolutely. We have a model that we use to help us truly understand consumers' approach, their expectations, to get us beyond shiny objects and fads, and really identify meaningful, lasting trends that are growing over time and represent key opportunities. So you'll see here, we use an iceberg model of meaning. And at its heart, we can see, at the top of that iceberg are the logical frame. It's what's visible, what we can easily talk about. When we ask consumers, they can easily articulate some answers, but those answers are typically logical, they're framed. We need to do observational research in order to truly understand consumers' core beliefs that are really leading to shifts in culture that are relevant to us. These core beliefs are often difficult to uncover. They're not obvious. They're not, right in front of us. And this is why, as I mentioned, we need to do observational analysis. And then, of course, we can often see manifestations of these core beliefs, the way that the manifestations play out in the market today. But manifestations also aren't necessarily trends. These manifestations shift and change over time as new solutions come on the market. So let me give you a really quick example of what we mean here. If we ask consumers, why does sustainability matter to you? Well, they might tell us the logical thing. I want to make the earth a better place. I want to do my part to create some lasting change. But through observational analysis, we found that many consumers actually feel that sustainability and sustainable solutions helps them to show off their sophistication. So those consumers driving Teslas, for example, get some form of social capital from the fact that not only are they doing something that's better for the planet, but they're also using a sophisticated product or a product that shows off their sophistication. So how do we do this observational analysis? Well, we have a team of PhD anthropologists who use our AI system to decode consumers' core beliefs. And a key thing here is we're not just looking at mentions. So we're not just looking at the number of times health or wellness or even diabetes comes up. Instead, we're looking at the direct and indirect mentions or contextual conversations consumers are having to really uncode those core beliefs. And of course, we at this point are able to get a representative sample in countries like the US, Canada, Australia. In some of the countries where consumers are not as engaged or don't have access to the web, we focus on middle class and above. But nonetheless, we can absolutely do global research and we can do work in 15 markets. So again, we use conversations consumers are having anyway, online regardless, and we decode those core beliefs. When it comes to health and wellness, it's not going to be a shock to know that though it's a mature culture, it's sitting in the mainstream, there's a consistent way consumers understand it, it's relevant to a large population of people with almost 90 million engaged. Again, not a huge surprise. However, again, when we do observational analysis and we dig a little bit deeper, we can identify microcultures that are earlier on that represent key opportunities for us. So for example, one of our first microcultures that we identified in the health and wellness space is holistic wellness. And this is really important to consumers. This is where we see consumers, pointing out and increasingly seeing or believing that we need to take a holistic approach. That is, in order to really safeguard our health, we need to keep in mind the relationship between the mind, the body, and even the spirit. So consumers aren't looking for that one-stop solution or point solutions. They're looking for solutions that take in the whole body, mind, and spirit. For example, consumers are increasingly noting that stress can exacerbate chronic conditions like diabetes. Again, that mind-body connection. Second, consumers are interested in trackable metrics. I don't think this is going to be a surprise. But again, through observational research, we see that their core belief here is that they feel like having agency or having more control over their health leads to better health outcomes. Again, how does this manifest? Well, consumers are tracking their macros, they're tracking their fitness, and of course, a continuous glucose monitor is a manifestation of this desire to have increased control over their health. Third, and really interesting, and goes back to this point that social justice is changing, or sorry, sustainability is changing in the minds of consumers, and what we see is social justice is being increasingly associated with things like health and wellness. Consumers believe that we all should have equal access to quality health solutions as well as quality and healthy food. These consumers are deeply concerned that things like insulin are not affordable, things like continuous glucose monitors are not necessarily covered by insurance. So they're looking for ways to ensure everybody, no matter their socioeconomic status, has access to health solutions. We could talk a lot about that one. It's a bit of a tricky one. But fourth, mental and emotional health. So again, this goes back to what we're seeing in that first microculture, that desire to make connections between the mind, the body, and the spirit. But here we're seeing consumers want to destigmatize, that they believe it's imperative that we destigmatize mental health and mental illness. Again, they're looking for affordable ways to get counseling, new solutions to, soothe their stress, relieve anxiety, manage their mood. So again, I mentioned that when we look at our microcultures, they're earlier on that maturity curve. And we can in fact see that they are situated in the early consensus stage of cultural maturity. What this tells us is that consumers don't have one consistent or overarching shared meaning. Instead, they're still trying to figure out what these mean to them. And indeed, there are some pain points associated with some of these issues. So there's a lot of opportunity here. When we're in that early consensus stage, we have the opportunity to be an early mover, maybe first on the scene ahead of some of our competition. We also can shape the narrative. Of course, that involves some work, but nonetheless, there is ample opportunity here, as we're going to talk about in just a moment. Before we do that, I want to also talk a little bit about some of the jobs to be done that we've uncovered by looking at consumer product reviews using our contextual intelligence technology. So when it comes to health and wellness, consumers want to regain their energy. They want to feel motivated. Noting here that consumers are looking for ways to get more energy that doesn't lead to a crash or a bad feeling afterwards. Second, really importantly, consumers want to avoid restrictive health regimens. And this is particularly true when it comes to diets. It's really hard. It can be socially isolating to maintain a diet that can help to manage diabetes or prediabetes, for example. Three, connected to that first microculture I mentioned, I want to address causes, not just symptoms. Consumers are increasingly looking to take a preventative approach to their health and wellness. Number four, really important, and again, maps back to that trackable metrics microculture we just discussed. I want access to health information without barriers, again, wanting to feel like agents in control of their health. And number five is something that we're seeing in a wide variety of categories and related to wide variety of products, this desire to verify the claims of health boosting goods. And consumers are increasingly looking for transparency, as I said, across different categories. But when it comes to health, it's really important. They want to feel like they're doing the right thing, and this is how they know that they're doing the right thing. So I briefly mentioned that we can map our jobs and our microcultures to get that really compelling and full picture of where there are opportunities. And we can see here that when it comes to holistic wellness, it is mapped against three of our jobs. It's very clearly quite important to consumers. Similarly, trackable metrics maps against, that desire to address causes, not symptoms. And then again, that mental and emotional health concern tracks against this desire to regain energy, avoid things that are overly restrictive. And so again, we'll use this rubric to help us understand where existing players are meeting some of their needs, as well as where there are some opportunities in this space. So I'll turn it back to Nardev and Harini to let us know what's going on in this space. How are some of these companies solving for consumer needs?
Thanks, Cheryl, for that in-depth insight into what goes into understanding consumer attitudes and how to use that knowledge to identify market opportunities. Now, we will use the framework that Cheryl shared to real-world case studies today. And we will do this by honing down on diabetes, as Cheryl and I mentioned earlier. Now, diabetes is widely recognized as one of the fastest growing diseases in the world today. The global cost of diabetes management is estimated to be 1.3 trillion US dollars annually. This is alarming for a disease which can be well managed with medical intervention and lifestyle interventions when picked up early. And if current ways of management continue to prevail, the global costs are expected to double. In other words, reach 2.6 trillion US dollars by 2030 annually. And given these alarming statistics, we felt that diabetes would be a good health condition to focus our framework on because of the market opportunity that it presents. So I will start with an example focused on a digital health platform. I'll start with Livongo. Livongo basically is a company that develops a health management platform which was initially focused on diabetes, but then they started to look into other areas like hypertension as well. And it aims to provide real-time feedback and coaching at home to users. It offers a SaaS type model with unlimited strips and lancets for a fixed monthly fee, which can either be borne by the user or can be paid by a payer. While such platforms are a dime a dozen now, Livongo was actually one of the pioneers with the SaaS model lifestyle intervention platform that's available on demand for diabetic patients. And so this was actually a game changer for the industry at the time. Now, Livongo saw such phenomenal success. They were reporting quarterly revenue growths of around 149 to 156% in the first year of launching. And so soon it became an acquisition target. And in 2020, it was in fact acquired by Teladoc Health for 18.5 billion US dollars, the biggest digital health acquisition recorded that year. So what did Livongo get right? Now, if you look at the rubric that Cheryl shared earlier, Livongo was actually able to address 4 of these jobs to be done. They were actually able to help diabetic patients regain their energy and motivation, because now they have a tool that allows them to basically monitor their diabetic condition on demand. It helped them avoid restrictive health regimens because it actually could help them, guide them, and give more personalized insights to make their lives easier. It allowed them to address causes, not symptoms, because AI-enabled analytics or AI insights could actually give them, insights into how to address the cause. And they could basically access this health information without real barriers. They didn't have to keep waiting for appointments before they would see an endocrinologist or their doctors. And this was actually able to address all the 4 microcultures that Cheryl talked about. So now Harini will share with you an example in the nutrition sector.
Absolutely, Nardev, and really great insights from Cheryl and Nardev. I'm going to talk a bit about the food and nutrition side of the business here. When you think about consumer health and wellness, that is one of the key innovation topics that we here at Lux Research, we get asked a lot from our clients and a number of other CPG companies. Now, one of the case studies that I wanted to bring here today is around Nestle Health's partnership with Finoa. Finoa is a UK-based company, and it develops a number of clinically validated functional ingredients. And a particular one that they developed is a glucose-lowering supplement. What Nestle did is really interesting. They took this functional ingredient, which is actually based on a mulberry leaf extract, and they kind of combined that with a formulation innovation to launch a supplement. It can be easily sprinkled or even mixed with meals, really helping consumers adopt that when you're talking about pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes population. And in fact, Nestle launched this particular project as a part of its pre-diabetes program in Malaysia, and that's one of the fast-growing countries in Asia where we're going to see a lot more of pre-diabetes and diabetes cases on the rise. Now, if you take this case study and map this back to what Cheryl had shared before, the framework connecting the microcultures and job to be done, it's very fascinating to see that this particular case study addresses about 3 different microcultures and also 3 different jobs to be done. In particular, I wanted to take your attention to that job to be done, which Cheryl had talked about, that consumers don't want to have restrictive, very strict regimes when it comes to dieting or following a particular diet pattern. Now, with Nestle's innovation with the sprinkleable powder and the formulation that can be easily incorporated during mealtimes, I think it would definitely help ease the consumer adoption. And this is something we are seeing a lot more from CPG companies when they are thinking about formulation innovation in line with consumer needs and their sentiments, what they're looking for. Also, I wanted to add that this particular ingredient in this case not only impacts the glucose levels positively, but also indirectly provides that improvement in energy level or gut microbiome improvement, or even cognitive health improvement to some extent, because you stop worrying a bit and you really have this ease and mood improvement. So overall, it's trying to address the holistic wellness that Cheryl had brought before. And this is a trend that we're continuing to see from a number of different CPG companies who are looking to develop products which really are addressing the holistic wellness as opposed to just one underlying health impact. So definitely these partnerships are something to keep an eye on.
Thank you very much, Harini. I think really interesting case study from Nestle here. Now, before we apply our framework to exploring new opportunities, I do want to go back to the few examples I spoke about earlier. I mentioned that some of these examples didn't succeed, and briefly told you there were some issues like technical reasons and a lack of understanding of consumer attitudes. But what exactly were they? Now, with our knowledge on jobs to be done that Cheryl walked you through, we can clearly see now where these players failed. Verily and Alcon were not really helping their consumers with a simple solution. What about customers who prefer to wear glasses, or they had perfect vision and they didn't need glasses? They wouldn't need such a solution. And Abbott already had a continuous glucose monitor and was pretty well penetrated at the time. Dyson's solution, was similarly a monstrosity to look at, and reportedly to have on too. And both of these, as you can see, were not really helping the consumers with something less restrictive. In fact, if anything, they were actually more restrictive. Apple's solution was originally positioned for healthy consumers, but the sudden pivot and interest to examine a disease state, in this case atrial fibrillation, led to multiple issues in actually helping consumers. In fact, it started to panic consumers unnecessarily, telling them that they had an issue when they didn't. So they couldn't actually verify the claim that was being made, or in this case, the nudge that was given to them, right? So you can see where these different players failed. So now that we've seen how this framework can be applied successfully and also what to avoid, I would like to discuss how we can actually evaluate an early stage technology as you think about exploring a new market opportunity. And in this case, I actually want to talk about human digital twin. Now, a digital twin is, in essence, a virtual model designed to accurately represent a physical object. Digital twins are already being used in asset-heavy industries today, like oil and gas and the automotive sector. And it's valuable in these industries as you could predict potential issues that might arise before they happen and intervene through those models. But if you think about the philosophy behind the digital twin, it can also apply to humans, right? Because you better understand and can potentially intervene and address any issues before they happen. Of course, we know that humans are extremely complex, but for a disease like diabetes today, we are at a stage where we can access multiple data streams available from a consumer. Besides glucose monitoring data, which is the obvious one, vital sign data like heart rate, respiration rate, blood pressure can be extracted through wearable technology today with even better and better accuracy over the years. In addition, lifestyle activity, nutrition data, all of these can be captured as well and be mapped onto a whole body digital twin. So like an industrial digital twin, these insights can be extremely valuable. We are at an early stage today, but you can see there are companies like Twin Health here that's already bagged 140 million, and Unlearn AI bagged a significant amount as well. So some interest here in these companies. And in fact, clients, in not just traditional areas, but even in retail, food and nutrition, sports apparel, even automotive sectors, could partner with developers, to build a digital twin that provides more personalized insights to a consumer. Now, when thinking about the rubric that Cheryl walked you through, you can actually see that technology like digital twin or human digital twin addresses all the jobs to be done, because by having that virtual representation, it actually gives very informed insights. So it actually helps users regain their energy and motivation to stay healthy. It avoids potentially restrictive health regimens because of the insights it provides. It addresses causes, not symptoms, because of its deep understanding of a particular individual. It doesn't provide any barriers to access health information that they need. And individuals can actually use that information to verify the claims of health boosting goods against their biology, and tackles all these microcultures here. And for a technology like that, you want to act sooner rather than later to gain a competitive edge before mainstream acceptance. As Cheryl shared earlier, these microcultures today are at early consensus, and it'll take a few years before they gain mainstream acceptance. So as you're planning your innovation roadmap, you do want to think about early stage technologies like this, which you can engage with. Now, moving beyond a single disease, we talked about diabetes today for the sake of simplicity, but the truth is that many health and wellness solutions, they don't operate in silos. In fact, many solutions today appear, or they, aim to tackle multiple health conditions. So this is where applying an understanding of microcultures and identifying the jobs to be done will be critical. In addition, understanding their level of maturity helps you pinpoint opportunities that will fall into the zone of innovation in the near future and can help you better plan your innovation journey. So, we want to leave you with three key takeaways today as we end the webinar. First, understanding demand side is really critical to unlocking new business opportunities for health and wellness. Second, decoding consumers' core beliefs is going to be key because manifestations aren't trends. And third, focusing on opportunities that will fall into the zone of innovation in the near future will help you plan your product development journey. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Shriram to round us off.
Thank you, Cheryl, Harini, and Nardev. This was really a fascinating presentation. Thank you very much again. To all the attendees out here, there's time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. So if you have any questions, please type them in the questions box, and you can also email us later at questions@luxresearchinc.com. And so we have one of the first questions here is, I think, for you, Nardev. Nardev, I know you're working on a report that kind of like expands on this whole idea that you talked about today. And the question I have is that presumably that report is really not just focused on diabetes, but it's going to look at a wider range of conditions. And also, so far, I know that report is still in progress, but so far, one of the questions that's coming up from the audience, and this is where the question is, are there other health conditions that you've come across that where you're seeing this applied and where you're seeing some interesting ideas coming up?
Absolutely, Shriram. I think that's a fantastic question. We kind of narrowed down the discussion today to focus on diabetes. We felt that was a condition folks can relate to. But there are, as we mentioned towards the end, there are other areas as well. I think one area that is becoming an increasing concern is cardiovascular health. And in fact, if you think about cardiovascular health, you can also think about how the rubric that we discussed could be applicable. For example, in the recent Consumer Electronics Show this year, a company called AliveCore, which they originally made a handheld 6-lead ECG monitors that you can actually have at home, which consumers can use. It's FDA approved. It provides you with very accurate information about your heart condition. But they actually went a step further because they realized that even that device was still a bit bulky and you couldn't bring it around everywhere. So now they actually went a step further, and they have a credit card sized device which you can actually fit in your wallet, right? And it has those LEDs, ECG LED sensors that you just place your thumb on it and it gives you an accurate reading. It's also FDA approved, right? And if you think about the jobs to be done and the microcultures it addressed, right? Again, because it's so simple and easy to use, consumers are more motivated to use it on a more regular basis to examine, their cardiovascular state. They can do it on the go. They can do it on the subway. They can do it on the bus because it's a credit card sized tool, right? And this company is actually growing. They've, been seeing a 25% increase in growth, and recently they also closed a $65 million Series E round. So, this is where you can see how the rubric and applying the thinking behind the microcultures and the jobs to be done matches up with what you actually see with how the company is actually doing well, right? And I only talked about one area here, mental health. There's so many other conditions. In terms of time, I do want to make sure other attendees can ask their questions as well. But just wanted to bring that one example up.
Thank you, Nardev. So that means I can keep my thumbs on that card and keep binging on ice cream and make sure I'm monitoring my glucose levels. So to the audience, whoever asked that question, please do keep an eye out for Nardev's report. We have time for one more question, and this question is on the topic of personalization, and this is for you, Harini. I think it's easy to understand personalization when you're talking about using the thermostat to set your temperature, to the right amount. But what about nutrition? What about supplements? Do you really think that can be personalized? What is the status, both from a manufacturing perspective as well as from the perspective of consumers willing to pay for these products?
Yeah, I mean, personalization, that's a great question. And honestly, here at Lux Research, we've been covering that in depth for quite some time. And if you look at the evolution of personalization, it started with pretty much fundamental data collection based on just, what's your height, weight, and what's your, fitness status, and what are your goals. So all the way to hyper-personalized solutions, which can be, based on nutrition or even like going into your microbiome analysis, biomarkers, DNA, and all of that, right? So where we are now, I would say there are some very notable failures which happen in the personalized nutrition space because the point that you brought up, Sharon, that consumers are okay to try that for the beginning, like maybe a month or two, and then to be having that as a sustainable revenue generation model for these startups has proven to be very difficult because consumers don't want to pay out of the pocket if it's going to be like, $200 per month. So what we're now seeing, and the moves from bigger companies like, if you take example of Bayer, Nestle, or even DSM, is really looking into personalization at the intersection of convenience. And then as they go into this journey further, they want to add that element of data collection, which makes it more hyper-personalized solution. Definitely there is a lot happening around supplements. Bigger companies like DSM, IFF have invested or partnered in the space. So I think going forward, what's going to be important is to think about the cohorts of population as opposed to really an equal to one approach when, developing products there.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Helene. Once again, let's thank our speakers. Thank you everyone for joining us on the webinar. This concludes our webinar today. The presentation and the recording will be emailed to you shortly. When you leave the webinar, you will be asked to complete a survey. So please do provide us with feedback because we can incorporate that and we can improve our webinars. Also, you can see the future webinars that are coming up on the screen. So take a moment, check them out. And if anything is interesting, please feel free to register. And once again, thank you very much and have a great day.